curriculum is constructed by groups or individuals, to suit the particular interests they represent. The curriculum is not neutral, it represents a point of view, or a perspective. It is often contested, and often the subject of public debate and discussion. Part 1. On your KWL chart, write about culture, power and knowledge, and their relationship to school curricula. Culture. What I know. Culture molds and shapes one's thinking. If education is to be relevant, it also must be culturally significant. Australia is still in the process of implementing a national curriculum, not only to address academic performance, but it also attempts to unite Australia's diverse range of students with shared experiences. While students will receive the same curriculum, not every student will have the same educational experience. Australian classrooms are not Anglo-Saxon institutions. Australian classrooms are alive with a rich and diverse range of cultural backgrounds. However, the Australian curriculum does not reflect this. For example, most children will be introduced to fairy tales/folktales early in life. These stories generally have cultural relevance and instill certain values. However, with the diverse range of students within the classroom, those early experiences often vary. Unfortunately, this is not reflected within the curriculum. Thus, students who are not familiar with the mainstream or classics are already disadvantaged, and as a result their intelligence may be wrongfully understated. What I want to know. The difference between being culturally sensitive and just being politically correct. What I have learned. The most important factor in learning is what the learner already knows, quote by David Ausubel. Ausubel's statement gives credit to the notion that children should be considered holistically. It must be acknowledged that a child's cognitive development is not limited to precursory curriculum subjects. Educators must recognize that with diversity comes a diverse range of pre-existing knowledge and experiences. On that note, educators must be conscious of the certain aspects of diversity they celebrate, and the other areas diversity that may be marginalized or stigmatized. Power. What I know. The Australian curriculum was introduced to give the Australian public a voice on the national curriculum, going as far as providing an online forum for members of the public to offer their thoughts. However, the skeptic in me questions the sincerity of the government. What I want to know. There is no doubt that the commercial sector has some influence over the curriculum, clearly evident by the cross-curriculum priority, Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. Coincidence that China and Japan are Australia's top 2 trading partners? With that said, obviously there needs to be communications between the commercial sector and the education sector, as education is ultimately preparing students for the workforce. My concern over this issue is how much of the curriculum is influenced by the commercial sector, and is it at the expense of a well-rounded education? Does political correctness govern the Australian curriculum? Was Australia settled or conquered? How much influence does the commercial sector have over the curriculum? What I learned. The curriculum may be perceived as a body of culture, a collection of knowledge and understandings deemed important by society. It is not a comprehensive account, rather a selection of noteworthy pieces. Therefore, curriculum is often considered a social construct, and those with influence have the capacity to guide the curriculum. From this week's readings, it is evident that the curriculum is influenced by various individuals and groups in which bias will always exist. The curriculum is always, in every society, a reflection of what the people think, feel, believe, and do. Knowledge. The Victor writes the history books. This famous quote perfectly depicts how certain groups or individuals with power can influence knowledge to suit their agenda. There are many cases where facts have been altered to suit groups or individuals, often at the expense of the oppressed minority. For example, whilst undertaking an Indigenous unit, I came across many articles concerning the stolen generation, in which a few of these articles stated how the Indigenous children were saved. Additionally, was Australia settled or conquered? Many outdated Australian history books will state Australia was settled on the premise of terra nullius. However, some current Australian history books state Australia was conquered. What I want to know. Who influences what goes into the curriculum? Is there any cultural bias in the curriculum? What strategies can we use to encourage students who feel the curriculum does not meet their needs, or are not interested in what needs to be taught? What I learned. Curriculum bias, regarding information or knowledge, takes various forms. Firstly, stereotyping. Various outdated books commonly portrayed the indigenous people of Australia as savages, and regarded their language to be primitive. Secondly, imbalance. Many textbooks present only one perspective, for example, the various mathematical and science books, which often only acknowledge European discoveries or inventions. Lastly, rose-colored glasses. This is a common and unfortunate bias, which has a tendency to omit the hardships endured by the minority. For example, many texts report that women were given the right to vote, however, very little texts report the physical abuse the leaders of the women's suffrage movement endured. Part 2. What is Bronfenbrenner basically trying to say about how and why children in different contexts achieve different educational outcomes? What Bronfenbrenner's social-ecological model suggests about how and why a child learns. Why Bronfenbrenner's model is relevant to a child's learning.